Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at 1995 Pinnacle football cards, both the main set and the quarterback club. Pinnacle started off in 1991 as a very cutting-edge card, and it maintained a very elegant presence for the next couple of years, but it needed to rebrand in 1994, and so it went with a three-quarter bleed card with this big element down at the bottom, which actually read pretty well, because Pinnacle, just like Ultra, knew that you had to focus on really good pictures, and so they had done a really good job of providing great quality cards that looked really good. Now, they still had some work to do, and so in 1995 they had to figure out, are we continuing with this trend? And the result was, yes, they were going to continue with the trend. They took the idea and they refined it a little bit more, which was a great move that they made. Now, Upper Deck did the same thing in 1995, and the two cards do look very similar. But there is a very clear distinction between the two cards. I don't want to go into a comparison between the two, but the 1995 Pinnacle card, it's amazing how using so similar of a design, the cards really can look as different as they do. This card for Pinnacle, is the first thing they did was they took away the big gold foil down at the bottom and the football that was kind of the centerpiece. They got rid of that and they put a Pinnacle emblem kind of floating up above, like Upper Deck always liked to do. Then down at the bottom, it was a full bleed, but down at the bottom they basically shaded the whole bottom with this arcing element. That was a great move because then they could put gold foil text for the player name and the position floating inside of that so that the text comes through really well. The shadow provides a really good foundation for the card, and everything's subdued enough that it doesn't take away from the player, so the player is still the focus of the card. It was a great combination. And likewise, if the card's rotated to the side, it's the exact same situation. But right above all of that, there's a little arc with some hash marks, all in gold foil. And it's representation of the top seam and the stitches on a football. So it's basically an abstract football. That's the whole concept of it. But it's so subdued that you don't really notice it. It's just this little element that looks really nice down below. And what I love is the artistic thought of that. This is the kind of thing that graphic designers love to be able to come up with. And not all graphic designers come up with an idea as pure and as brilliant as this idea is. It's so subtle that you may never even notice, but it doesn't matter because it looks great, and it is a really wonderful little thing that they did. Wonderful little theme, wonderful concept. It reads beautifully. The card itself works fantastically. And again, the images do read really well, partially because how they're selected, but also because this was kind of the height of saturation of colors. They weren't overly done. It's not like 1993 Upper Deck where they got a candied-like richness to the colors. Here they're just really strong, which is great. So everything reads really well on the card. And on the card back, the previous year they'd just gotten too carried away. They'd made a really busy card back. In this case, they really stripped it down. They have a color box on one side that fades into an image on the other side. You have the text in the color box. You have some horizontal black and white lines for all the stats. And the way that the card reads, it's not a remarkable card back, but it is a good card back, and it does everything that it needs to do, so it works as a really good complement to the card front. And the card front, I mean, this is one of the great card fronts of the 1995 card year. It's actually one of the better card designs of the whole 90s. It was a real successful card, and thankfully on the card back, they kind of held up. So that was a good thing that they did. They had this year down. But they also, in 1994, had created a parallel, which they called the Trophy Collection. And this uses a Dufex technology where they have all these striations coming out from behind a football. Well, in this year, they continued with their Trophy Collection, except instead of having a football, they used the Pinnacle brand up in the corner, and then it all radiates out from there. And it still looks really good. In fact, it looks a lot better because this has almost a satin-like quality to it. It has a delicacy to it. The way that they worked all of this, it really does look exquisite. And then when you get down to the football theme at the bottom, the whole football element is now more of a chrome-like finish. It doesn't have the striations in it, so it works as an added element to the whole design of the card. It's a lot of fun. But in 1994, Upper Deck had done a two-tier parallel. So they had three cards. They had their base card, they had a one per pack silver card, and then they had a one per box gold card. So Pinnacle decided to do the same thing. So they still had their trophy cards, which were not one per pack, but they were still at a fairly easy to come by rate. And then they did another parallel of this. And when I mean parallel of this, I mean identical. They did what they call artist proof. And this is the same card, completely the same card. The Trophy Collection card has a little emblem on the back that says Trophy Card. Well, guess what? The Artist Proof has the same thing. The Artist Proof has the same defects. Everything about the card is the same, except the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little triangle down there, and there's a seal that's rotated 45 degrees that says Artist Proof. That's the only difference. That's it. And if the card is rotated horizontally, it's still in the same location. So you have to look at the bottom right corner, and down there, that's where you're going to see the seal, which tells you if it's an Artist Proof card or not. And it makes it really fun, in part because they still look great, but also because they're kind of hidden. You got to look for these, and it elevated the whole experience. The rookies in this set, they weren't done as a subset, but they were done a little bit differently. Now, first off, the images of the rookies, they were all in their regular NFL uniforms, but it was all the rookie photo shoot cards, so they look very different from the main cards in the set. But the big way that you can tell is that the dark shadow at the bottom, here it's actually burgundy. So it's not black, it's a burgundy treatment. And so when you get to all of these cards, they do look different. So that was a cool little thing that they thought of to add into here. And that was all that they needed to do. They didn't need to do anything else. The card itself, the design worked so well. Now they did have an actual subset in the set called Pinnacle Passers. And this is, you'll be shocked to hear, quarterbacks. With this card, what they did was they basically just darkened the whole background so that just the quarterback is really coming out. And then they have almost a whole strip of gold down at the bottom. And then on the card back, again, it's a darkened background with the shot of the player, which gives them the ability to have almost like a bronze plaque back there, which is actually kind of cool. I mean, the cards don't look great, but it's a cool idea that they did. And I like how the bronze plaque really reads. So that was their insert. And these cards all had the parallels. So understand, with the parallel cards, every single card in the set came with a Trophy Collection parallel. And every card came with an Artist Proof parallel as well. Well, okay, not everyone. We'll get to that in a second. But they also had two specialty cards. One of them was for Steve Young, who got his legal degree. So they had a picture of him with a fake sky behind. He's in a judge's robe. He has a football jersey underneath it. He's got a gavel of football. He's somehow hovering up along a goalpost. And it makes a really interesting defects card because just the way that all the patterns worked. So that was a cool card they did, but they also did a tribute to Joe Montana. And this is actually a horizontal card. It has him in his Chiefs uniform, one in his Niners uniform, and then a semi-sepia image in the back that's just, it really keeps that nostalgia. And on the card back, it looks like a tribute card. But this is one that did have a really, really, really nice trophy card, but it did not have an Artist Proof card. They just didn't bother to do an Artist Proof card for this card. In fact, the trophy card for this is a really rare card, so it's kind of at the same rate as an Artist Proof card. So it's almost as if they just didn't make a trophy card, they only made the Artist Proof card without the seal. That's the way to think about it. So if you're going to put together the set of trophy cards, there's one card that's going to be really tough to get. If you want to get the Artist Proof cards, you're going to be missing one card. There are only 249. That's just the way that it works. And then they closed the set out with a bunch of checklists. In this case, what they did with the checklist was they actually put a player on the front, and then on the back they had the checklist. Now, in the previous year, 1994, they did checklists for each division. So all the AFC teams and all the NFC teams were on separate checklists because the set itself is random. All the players are just spread all out. And so they put together a checklist that at least broke them down into the conferences, which was kind of a weird thing that they did, but they did that. Well, this is the same way. So half of the checklists are AFC, half of them are the checklists are NFC, and then they do have a chase card or insert card checklist as well. So all of those come with different players on them, and they all do come with the two parallels. But they also had an additional card. This is an SP card. It's not a part of the set. It's card number 251, and it's Deion Sanders celebrating his signing with the Dallas Cowboys. It's not considered an official part of the set, and there are no parallels of this card, so it's just an additional card at the end. That was the set that they made. And then they did obviously have some inserts, and the first insert set they had was Black and Blue. Now, Black and Blue is basically a bunch of star players. It's a pretty big set, but they're also cards that are a little tough to come by. And every one of these cards has a very bold, forward defects. I almost don't even want to call it defects because it's so bright silver, but is a very, very lively card, an overly lively card. So it's a shiny object, as shiny of an object as it's going to get. And then they have Clear Shots. And Clear Shots is a card I really want to like because it has all the pieces to be a good card. It's just not a good card. It is an acetate card, so you have the player kind of floating in an empty space on one side of the card. And then on the other side, they have, it's almost not even Dufex itself because it's just this this colorful swirl of, I don't know, it's stuff. But the problem is it's a block. It's just a box. And while on the back it works really well because you can have the text, the card itself just doesn't feel designed. So I look at this card and I go, ooh, I wonder what it could be if it grows up, but it never grew up. It was stilted. This is basically all that we got with it. Then they have their Game Breaker set. And the Game Breakers these are really exquisite cards. I mean, there's nothing really too special about them because they're common enough. There's nothing special on the back. But the way that the Dufex is done on the front is, it really is like a satin texture. I mean, this is just an exquisite card. It's a card that I just love holding and moving around. The cards in the main set are all a lot of fun, and they look great. This, to me, it just looks a little bit more refined, so it's really great. And then they have their Showcase set, and this is something that really does make a nod to the fact that Pinnacle cards are supposed to be the formal cards. These cards, black and white on both sides, this really does it. It's a really heavy black and white image of the player with a little black strip at the bottom. You got some silver text, not a lot. When you turn it over, it's a black and white action shot of the player. So the whole card just has that really heavy formal feel, and they look really good. But Pinnacle also like to do their Team Pinnacle cards, which is where they have two players, one on either side. And in 1994, they played a trick where they had Dufex on one side and they had like a chrome finish on the other side. But they also had it reversed as well. So every card had the Dufex and the chrome on opposite sides, two versions of each card. Well, here in 1995, they didn't do that. Now, the Beckett says that they do. I have never encountered one that has it in the reverse. Every single card, there's very clearly the number of the card is on the back. Every single card I've ever come across has the Dufex on the opposite side. So I'm going on the record saying, no, they didn't do the other side. And if they did, if you've ever found one of these, please let me know. I am really intrigued about the potential that those might actually exist. I don't know how they would have because, I mean, I've seen so many of these and I've never encountered one. But these are really nice cards because here they have kind of a sideways streak. It's almost like flames, and it makes the Dufex have a very, very exciting, vibrant quality. Not overdone. It's really rich and wonderful to look at. And even on the opposite side, the chrome has a really warm, glowing quality to it. So they did a great job with these cards. And then they also did a special set with Dial. These cards, the design for the cards is very simplistic. There's just an image, there's some stuff down at the bottom, there's really not much to them. But this was not part of the Pinnacle proper, this was a Pinnacle release with Dial, so it is separate. But in 1995, Pinnacle did do a special set, and they were going to be doing a lot of Pinnacle Mint and Pinnacle Express and some Pinnacle brand-like sets. Well, this was just straight up Pinnacle. But it was a specialty Pinnacle set based upon the Quarterback Club. So the Quarterback Club was its own players association. You have the NFL Players Association, and every card company makes a deal with the NFLPA. So they make a deal with the NFLPA for the license of the players. They make a deal with the NFL properties for all of the logos, the team logos. And the Quarterback Club was basically the guys who had a lot of sway, mostly quarterbacks, but not just that, Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders, some of the really big names. They split off and made their own players association so they could set up their own deals. And this made some confusion here and there, but it gave companies the ability to actually have a Quarterback Club specific deal. And so in the case of Pinnacle, they did a set based on the Quarterback Club. And they've done these cards in a similar way to how ProLine did their portraits cards. Basically, it's 9 cards for each player. So this set is all in groups of 9, and it's all the players, so every player gets their own sheet of cards. The design itself it has kind of a Pinnacle feel. The card back has kind of a Pinnacle card back feel, kind of a specialty set kind of a design. And every card, unlike ProLine where they did a theme, and right in the middle they had a specialty card, an art card, so the whole thing looked like a whole composition. In this case, they didn't bother to do that. They just have 9 cards that all happen to be on the same page, and the last 2 cards have a different orientation. It's kind of a mess of a design, but overall, it's cool that they did this so that every single player gets 9, and you just head right through the whole set. And they did do 3 insert sets. So they start off with Aerial Assault, and this set uses Dufex on the front. It's the card itself, I think, is a little bit over-designed. They basically have like a X pattern over the background. So the background's chrome, the X pattern, and the player all have Dufex. And it doesn't really read well, but if you flip it over, I really love the chrome finish on the back. Here, the chrome finish is almost at its height. That whole card back almost looks good enough to be a card front. So I think that's really cool. Ironically, Arms Race is a chrome finished surface, and it's not as good as the card back. I mean, the design's a little bit better, but the finish isn't quite as good, in my opinion, as the back of the Aerial Assaults card. But these cards do also include players who weren't even in the set, which is a really ironic thing about them. And then they had a really small set called Spotlight. This is just 5 cards. These are star players, obviously. And here the Dufex has, it's more like Fleer Metal, actually. It's a bunch of little panels, but when you get the light to show you how the design is in it, it's really cool. So this was a great card. It's more rare. There aren't very many cards in it, but yeah, it does look really cool. But they also did a special release in these packs where they have an exchange card for a pin, a lapel pin. So in this, you get one of these cards for the send away, and then on the back you get the send away information, and then you would get a pin in response. So that was an interesting thing they were doing. Now, they already did this as well in 1994, where they actually did it as blister packs. So here, this was a send away for these cards, or for these pins, but you're at least going to encounter the cards themselves if you open up enough boxes. And then the only other thing to talk about is that it's referred to as 1996, but for the 1996 Super Bowl card show, so this is the tail end of the 95 year, Pinnacle did a set of cards for that this has the same type of finish as the black and blue cards, but the card design is actually one of the quarterback club cards. So for each player in the quarterback club, one of the cards in that is used in this Super Bowl card show card design. I mean, the front, the back, the whole thing, it's the same card. It's just that they added the overly done Dufex on the front, and they have a little Super Bowl logo on it. That's the only difference. But those cards also exist, and they're referred to as 96. Really, they're an extension of the quarterback club cards. They're in a way kind of a parallel of them, but it's only one card from each of the players that they did this. And that was 95. That's what they did, which was fine. There was plenty that they did in 1995, but it was a great year. 1994 was a good year. 95, they just got so much better, and they had really hit their stride, and they knew what they were doing. 96 would be a bit of a fall off, but not too bad. But for 95, at least we were able to really enjoy that. So I'll be doing 96 eventually, and definitely check that out when it happens. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and yeah, check out my other videos. Thanks for watching.